Here's my audience. Red. Okay. See if it'll work. Maybe not. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, today I'd like to do a speech on tattooing for my cultural presentation. I've always been around people who have been always covered in tattoos. My parents are both head to toe covered in tattoos. I also have tattoos, and I've always found them very interesting. I just kind of think it's really interesting, and I love the idea of your body being a canvas. So, tattooing. Tattooing really didn't start at any time. They don't really know when, because as far as it goes back, people from like Iceman times have always had tattoos. Researchers and like archaeologists have always discovered that like Egyptians, like mummies had tattoos, Smithsonians had tattoos, and a bunch of, mostly females had tattoos. And it was always kind of like, they did it for many reasons, such as like an identity kind of thing, where if you were like royalty or if you were like a slave, they did tattoos. And they always like, they found this, that mummies had tattoos in like 2000 BCE. They did this in many different ways. I kind of want to go ahead and discuss about the history of how they did tattooing. So they used to kind of like carve the skin. Like Native Americans used to take like jagged bone and rock, and they would carve the skin and then take like a soot or an ash and kind of like rub it in until it healed. That was one way they did it. Hawaiians and Polynesians would take like a board, and they would take like a cactus needle and attach it, and they would start like, tapping the skin. And then they would do the same thing where they would take like soot and ash and then rub it in. Tattooing had a really good like indicator of like a person's status. Women would get facial tattoos. One example, according to the Smithsonian Magazine website, is where women would take a tattoo down their chin, and that was a good way to indicate if they had received their first menstrual cycle. They also did facial tattoos as a sign of like protection, and just how their cultural was. According to tattooing101.com, tattoo machines became more normalized in the 1800th century. In 1891, the first rotary machine was created by Sam O'Reilly, and this was because Thomas Edison had created like a rotary kind of mechanism, and they turned it into a machine. That is one way where they would like make the first machine of tattooing. The other one would be a coil. The difference is coils are more traditional. They are more louder, and they have that typical buzzing. They're more powerful, and they do more like a punching into the skin with the ink. So they have like a deeper way to get to the skin. Rotary machines are more like quieter. They're more, they're very light-handed. They're good for, I would say, a beginner, because they do not, they don't drag. They make smooth, crisp, clear lines. They also have created recently a machine where it's kind of like a pen, so it doesn't have like a coil or a rotary machine attached to it that punches the needle where you can see it. The pen, which I did this tattoo on, it's more quieter and it's more easy to hold. There are different inks now that they do. According to tattooing101.com also, they have different types of ink depending on the person and the skin because of allergies. A tattoo artist I go to, Harry, at Dark Horse in Pekin, they do like their ink comes from like natural sources, so it's not like Indian ink, and it's good for the skin because it's natural. It's not going to mess up like any pH balance or anything. So yeah, there are also like so many different types of styles when it comes to tattooing. For example, there's like Japanese, American traditional, fine line, And all of them are different in a way that they had to come up with their own kind of style. They also do like realism pieces, which are really intricate and really detailed. And there's like over 80 different kinds of styles. I could go on and on about it. But yeah. The other way that they kind of did tattooing would be like stick and poke. So it's kind of popular in like prison. And this was kind of a way to mark territory. Tattoos kind of symbolize a lot of things, such as personal reference. For example, this is a memorial tattoo for my grandma Raven. This one is also a memorial tattoo, and then this one is just for personal use. I also have a Roman numeral number 9 behind my ear, and it matches with my mom. So there are so many different reasons why you can get a tattoo. It's not also just for personal reasons. It could be for religious reasons. I know in Christianity, it's kind of deemed not okay to get tattoos, but in other cultures and religions and beliefs, it was a sign of protection and just ways so like when you pass, your loved ones would see who you were because of your tattoos. Tattoo artists typically are very like sanitary when it comes to tattooing nowadays. So you're not gonna get a tattoo with rock, you know. They would typically start off with cleaning the skin and then shaving the area. And then they would take like a stencil gel and then they would put the stencil on, usually with like a purple ink. It's just easier for the artist to see. And then they would basically use like a Vaseline to kind of stick their like little cups full of the ink so it doesn't spill or anything, just so it's sanitary. And then they would go ahead and do the tattoo. And it typically depends where you get your tattoo done on your body. There's different pain tolerances. For example, the rib cage and the sternum is more painful than, say, your forearm or a thigh. The more muscle you have, it's typically less painful. Anywhere that's on bone, it's a little bit more painful just because of the sensitive area. For example, right here would be a little bit more tender because it's not that much there. I will say when I did get my ear tattooed over here, where is it on this side? It did not hurt at all. I think the one on my ankle, which is a butterfly, that one hurt more just because there's more muscle there and I have small ankles, so, you know. So then afterwards, after the tattoo, they basically tell you, stay hydrated. They would cover it with like a saran wrap or like a clear sticker. And then you're supposed to leave it on for like at least 5 days just to protect the skin. You kind of want to keep it away from the sunlight because the sun will damage your tattoo. This has been kind of like a known thing. They always kind of did it so you're supposed to cover the tattoo just so it heals properly. You know, because tattoos are an open wound and you want to make sure that you don't get like a skin infection because that would be very bad. And then before your tattoo, you also want to make sure that you are hydrated. You want to make sure that you have food in your system because if you have food in your system, you are less likely to experience discomfort and pass out, which you don't want to do. And then any other final suggestions I want to point out is tattoos are okay to get. Don't listen to whatever people tell you about tattoos. They don't always mean like gang or, you know, bad things. I do want to point out you should always do research before you get a tattoo, just to be on the safe side. And that's pretty much it.